China has discovered the easiest way to weaken the United States, and that too without firing a single bullet at America. The most powerful weapon China has against Washington, it's not its navy, neither its missiles, nor it's even its army. China's greatest advantage is simply getting America to look somewhere else.
The United States military began major combat operations in Iran.
Because while the United States keeps getting pulled from one crisis to another, China keeps doing something far more dangerous. It keeps getting stronger. And here's the question nobody wants to ask. Is America preparing to fight China while slowly exhausting itself everywhere except China? Welcome back to the end state. Today's story is incredible, but the next one is up to you. Drop your pick in the comments and we'll select. Let's get back to today's story. For 20 years, America fought in Afghanistan, it fought in Iraq, it became involved in Syria, it expanded military operations across the Middle East, and every war had a price. Not just money, but attention, weapons, soldiers, political energy, and most importantly, time.
Good afternoon. On my orders, the United States military has begun strikes against Al-Qaeda terrorist training camps and military installations of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan.
Because while America was fighting insurgencies in deserts and mountains, something was happening thousands of miles away. China was growing. Its factories were expanding, its economy was rising, its military was modernizing, its navy was getting bigger, and Beijing was watching America spend year after year fighting wars that China didn't have to fight. So here's the uncomfortable question. Did America spend 2 decades fighting yesterday's wars while China prepared for tomorrow's war? And this is where the story becomes even more dangerous. China doesn't necessarily have to defeat America. Think about that for a second. It may need not to sink an American aircraft carrier. It may not need to invade another country. It may not even need a direct war with the United States. Because there is another way to compete with a superpower. Make it spend its strength everywhere. Create stability in the world for China without China even paying a single penny. Look at America today. Europe needs attention, the Middle East can explode at any moment, shipping routes need protection, allies expect military support, and at the same time, Washington says its biggest long-term challenge is China. But here comes the problem. How do you focus on your biggest rival when the rest of the world keeps catching fire? Imagine the United States as a boxer, a very powerful boxer, probably the strongest in the ring, but instead of facing one opponent, it is forced to fight 5 at the same time. One throws a punch from Europe, another from the Middle East, another threatens global shipping, another demands weapons, and somewhere in the corner, China is watching. Not rushing, not panicking, but waiting. Because every missile America fires somewhere else is a missile that has to be replaced. Every military deployment costs money, every crisis demands attention, and every new war raises a terrifying question. What happens if the biggest crisis starts while America is already stretched thin? This is where China's strategy could become extremely powerful. Not because China controls every conflict, it doesn't. And not because Beijing is secretly behind every war. That would be too simplistic. The real advantage is much more subtle. China can benefit when America's attention is divided. While Washington reacts to today's emergency, Beijing can think about the next 10 years. While America sends weapons into one conflict, China can expand its industrial capacity. While Washington debates whether to intervene again, China continues building ships, developing missiles, producing drones, investing in artificial intelligence, and expanding its economic influence. So the competition isn't just about who has the biggest military, it's about who is using their time better. And that could be China's biggest advantage. But now comes the part that should worry Washington the most. America's military power is global. That sounds like an advantage, and it is. But it also creates a massive weakness, because when you promise to defend interests all over the planet, every crisis becomes your problem. A conflict in Europe, America gets involved. A crisis in the Middle East, America is expected to respond. A threat to shipping, American warships may be sent. And if tensions rise in Asia, once again, America is expected to be ready. So here's the nightmare scenario. What if multiple crises happen at the same time? What if America is forced to choose? Which ally gets the weapons? Which region gets the ships? Which conflicts gets the attention? And which crisis has to wait? That is when being everywhere can suddenly mean being strong nowhere. Meanwhile, China has a completely different advantage. Its primary strategic focus is much closer to home, the Western Pacific, the South China Sea, and Taiwan. So while America must think globally, China can concentrate, and concentration can be incredibly powerful. Imagine 2 armies, one is spread across 5 battlefields, the other is focused on one, which can move faster. which can prepare more efficiently, and which one has the easier supply lines. Exactly. And that is why America's endless commitments could become China's opportunity. But there's another battlefield, and this one might be even more important: the economy. Wars burn money, China builds factories. Wars consume ammunition, China increases industrial production. Wars destroy infrastructure, China invests in infrastructure. And in long-term competition between superpowers, industrial power can become military power. Because you can't fight a long war with speeches, you need ships, missiles, drones, factories, technology, and an economy capable of replacing everything that gets destroyed. So perhaps the real competition between America and China isn't about who wins the next battle. It's about something much bigger. Who can sustain the competition the longest? And this is where America's endless wars becomes a potential strategic trap. And every new conflict creates pressure for more spending, more weapons, more deployments, more commitments, and eventually America could face a dangerous choice. Does it continue managing crises across the world, or does it concentrate its resources on China? Because doing both could become increasingly difficult, and Beijing understands something extremely important. You don't always have to push your enemy into a trap. Sometimes you simply watch them walk into it. But don't get the idea wrong. China hasn't already won. The United States still has enormous advantages: a massive military, powerful alliances, advanced technology, global financial influence, and military experience that China simply doesn't have. But history has shown something important. Superpowers rarely collapse because of one single defeat. They become weaker when they are overextended, when their resources are divided, when their enemies force them to react instead of allowing them to plan. And that may be the real battle happening right now. Not just missiles, not just aircrafts, not just soldiers, but attention, time, money, industry, and strategic patience. Because while America keeps asking, what crisis do we deal with next? China may be asking a much more dangerous question: how much stronger can we become while America is distracted? And if America keeps fighting one endless crisis after another, China may never need to defeat the United States directly. Because by the time America finally turns around, the balance of power may already have changed, and China may have won the most important battle of all, the battle for the future. So, what do you think? Is China luring USA into an endless trap? Let us know in the comments. I'm your host Z, and I'll see you in the next video.
Greetings, comrades, he shouts. Greetings, President, the reply. This is a display of his military reforms, his iron control grip, and his vision for where China goes next.